Thank you guys for joining. We're about to start the service. If you guys would please silence your cell phones. Thank you.
We'll be singing a song, Psalm 90. It's in your program called Limnot Yameinu. Limnot Yameinu. Limnot Yameinu. Limnot Yameinu Kein Hoda. Venavi levav chochma, limnot yameinu kein hoda. Venavi levav chochma. Treasure each day, teach us to treasure each day. Treasure each day. Teach us to treasure each day. Limnot yameinu. Limnot yameinu. Limnot yameinu kein hoda. Venavi levav chochma. Limnot yameinu kein hoda. Venavi levav chochma. Teach us to treasure each day. Teach us to treasure each day, that we may open our hearts to your wisdom. Oh, teach us to treasure each day, that we may open our hearts to your wisdom. Oh, teach us to treasure each day. Treasure each day. Teach us to treasure each day. Treasure each day. Teach us to treasure each day. My name is Cantor Shandel Adler, and now I'd like to invite Linda's niece, Christine, and nephew, Adam, to come up for Psalm 23, which was Linda's mom's favorite psalm.
Psalm 23, a psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I lack nothing. God makes me lay down in green pastures and leads me to the water of places of repose. God renews my life and restores my soul and guides me along the paths of righteousness in keeping with the honor of God's name. Though I walk through the valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, and you are with me. Your rod and your staff, your power and your support, they comfort me. You set before me a table in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup is overflowing. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall come to dwell in the house of the Eternal for many long years.
Mizmor leha David, Adonai roi lo exar. Binot de esha yazbir latzani, al ma me, no kot yihye lane. Nefesh yeshovav yane chane, vema'a gaale, zekdek lema'a na sha'amo. Gam ki Allah bazge lazman vet lo ira ra. Ika la emazde shifta ha. O misha na kala ma. Ihina kahamone. Taha roka lafana ni. Shol kahane gehet sor rehenri. Dishahata ve shin men rochi kaho re va'a. Akato ve ashte yirdihye phoni. Kol yime kaharye ve shive te beyaha Adonai lihiot yamim.
Ach tov v'chesed, yirtefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai, v'shavti beveit Adonai, yorech yamim. We gather today to honor and remember the life of Linda Pearl Hooker Pudalov, a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. A woman whose life was as full of meaning as it was of kindness and laughter. As we reflect on her journey, we are reminded that the best way to remember someone is not just by the years they lived, but by the legacy they leave behind in the hearts of those who loved them. Linda was born on March 15, 1951, in Denver, Colorado, at St. Joseph's Hospital. From a young age, she was a woman of talent and creativity. Coming from a working-class family, she learns from early on to be resourceful. Her mother, Frances, a homemaker, taught her how to sew and make her own clothing. And her father, Scott, a truck driver, showed her how to preserve and repair items around the house. Linda was musical, and she played both the piano and the guitar with her sister, Karen. Girl Scouts was also very important to her and her sister, and her mom was the Girl Scout troop leader. Linda kept in touch with her Girl Scout friends throughout her life, and as adults, they held Girl Scout reunions. Her love for life was nurtured early on with adventures that took her out of the city of Denver. Whether it was horseback riding on her aunt's ranch in Grand Junction with her cousin Beth, or camping trips with the Girl Scouts, Linda's childhood was filled with exploration. Her academic journey was equally impressive. After Linda's senior year of high school, she had an internship at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, NCAR, working on the time clock programming for North America. Linda earned a full scholarship to Stanford University, where she majored in mathematics. Linda not only excelled in her studies in California, but also studied abroad in France, becoming fluent in French. However, after some time, she realized that her true calling was not in numbers, but in helping people. She transitioned to a degree in occupational therapy from Colorado State University, where she met her lifelong teacher, Prem Rawat, and also the love of her life, Mitch. Together, they forged a partnership that would last a lifetime. Linda and Mitch were married on December 21st, 1974, in a beautiful, simple ceremony in Denver at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. They wrote their own vows and designed a ceremony that mixed elements of Judaism with a universal sense of spirituality. It was a moment that perfectly reflected Linda's heart, one that embraced love, tradition, and the broader human experience. The smashing of the glass on the floor at the conclusion of their wedding ceremony made a powerful booming sound. After their marriage, they moved to Illinois, and Linda worked in rehab at a hospital in Champaign, supporting Mitch through veterinary school. Then they moved to Long Island, New York, and prepared to have a family. In October 1981, Linda gave birth to her son, Eric, followed by her daughter, Emily, in March 1984. Linda's role as a devoted mother became the cornerstone of her identity. Her children were her proudest accomplishments. She was the kind of mother who showed up, whether it was at PTA meetings, teaching her children about the importance of faith and community, or leading them through the values she held dear. She loved making art, poetry, and music with Eric and Emily, and every Friday night they celebrated Shabbat. Linda was particularly dedicated to Eric, and her motherly devotion and support enabled Eric to successfully heal and overcome obstacles that he endured as a result of a brain tumor. Linda's involvement in her community was not limited to her own family. She was an active member of her synagogue and served on the board and as an assistant treasurer. In 2000, she embraced a deeper connection to Judaism by studying for 2 years and undergoing a conversion ceremony. This act of commitment was extremely meaningful to Linda after having lived a Jewish life for so many years. She finally made it official. Linda worked in home health care as an occupational therapist and as a bookkeeper for the Family Animal Hospital. She taught herself how to use QuickBooks with minimal instruction. That's pretty awesome. It's true. In addition, Linda was very involved in supporting Prem Rawat's peace education program. She facilitated outreach in prisons, helping incarcerated individuals connect with their inner resources and find peace. It was one of the many ways Linda chose to give of herself to others, always striving to make the world a better place in significant ways. When Mitch and Linda moved to Parker, Colorado in 2016, Linda embraced a new chapter of life. They replaced their boat with an RV, which was affectionately called the Land Yacht. And together with Karen and her husband, Dan, Linda and Mitch embarked on road trips to national parks. Linda had boxes and boxes of things just for traveling. It was a big part of her identity. Linda had a passion for bird watching and kept a bird book in which she marked every bird she ever met. Linda was also ahead of her time in many ways. She was a feminist and an environmentalist long before it was fashionable. Her commitment to recycling, composting, and reducing her environmental footprint were ways in which she lived with intention. Having grown up in a diverse community, she used to joke around that someday the whole world would be brown. In 2023, when Linda was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, She faced her illness with the same courage and grace that had characterized her entire life. She did not fear death. Instead, she embraced the natural cycle of life with acceptance and peace. She often said that she had no regrets. She had lived a full life and she was ready. Yet even as she approached the end, Linda continued to share her wisdom, her sense of humor, and her undying love for those around her. Linda was not just a mother, a wife, or a friend. She was a beacon of kindness, had an amazing sense of humor, was a model of selflessness, and a reminder that the greatest gift we can give to others is our love and presence. She was very unorganized, uncomplicated, and was a healing salve to her family. As her father-in-law once said, "There's no guile in Linda, no false pretenses. Every time I see her, I love her more." She was incredibly loved and admired by everyone who knew her. Her family will remember her as a devoted wife and mother, someone who was always there when they needed her with open arms and a ready heart. Her legacy lives on in Mitch, Eric, Emily, and all those who were touched by her spirit. Linda's love was the kind that changed the lives of those around her, and though she is no longer with us, her influence will never fade. As we say goodbye to Linda, we know she has returned to the ocean of the divine, as she once said. She was and always will be a part of something greater than ourselves. May her memory be a blessing, and may we all continue to honor her by living with grace, love, and dedication to peace. Now I'd like to invite Mitch up to speak.
Well, I'm glad I don't wear makeup. That's all I can say. My mother, Mary, was quite knowing, or psychic, if you will. You couldn't hide anything from this mom. Well, that's true for most moms. She told me she knew my father, Irving, was the one when she heard his voice from around a corner at a political meeting in Chicago, political conference. Sometime in 1972, I realized I had inherited mom's gift. That year, I had a vision in my mind's eye that I was going to meet a woman shortly who was going to be a very significant person in my life. The vision was indistinct, like a charcoal pastel. Linda then came into my life. I had no idea she was going to become my wife. We met at a massage class. And we weren't partners. It was a local center for followers of Prem Rawat. A friend of mine was teaching the class. He had a very unique self-taught style. Linda had seen an ad for the class and asked her roommate if she would like to go. And right before, she canceled and Linda went by herself. Maybe that worked out favorably for me. Linda and I were not partners. I guess I said that already. But we started talking after the class, and then we started dating. We had so much to discuss about our spiritual quests. Our relationship took hold gradually, but very solidly and strongly. Linda, right from the beginning, got my sense of humor. She had a bubbly personality with a nervous laugh in those days. And some would say that she still does. Some thought she was a dumb blonde, but those that got to know her realized nothing was farther from the truth. Lucky for me, this Colorado girl who was going to school in Stanford transferred to Colorado State to study occupational therapy, where I was a pre-vet student working on my BS in microbiology. Laughing together was always great medicine. even in the last hours of her life, which I will get to later. What a great life we had together. Too many adventures to recount. We purchased a used boat in Canada and brought her all the way back to Long Island. We crossed Lake Ontario, went east on the Erie Canal, and then down the Hudson River to New York. The manufacturer, PDQ, offered classes and onboard piloting experience. As I was watching from a different boat, I watched Linda back down this 32 boat down through a narrow canal. A very proud moment for me. Well, she was a truck driver's daughter, so I guess it applies to boats as well, I guess. So water was so much a part of our lives together. Linda expressed that she was a drop of water that eventually would return to the ocean of the divine. I whispered this in her ear in her last moments. Hours before she passed, she indicated to Karen and I that she was in pain. She had difficulty speaking, but we understood her. So I gave her a dose of pain medication and an anti-anxiety medication. It was a little slower to work this time. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, even now I can annoy you telling you to do something. And she laughed. She actually laughed. It was so incredible. Soon afterwards, she slipped into a peaceful state and passed shortly after that. As her primary caretaker, I realized that every moment, even those that were very hard, were a privilege for me. A privilege to serve her as she had served so many, especially me, Eric, and Emily. We were facilitators for Prem Rawat's Peace Education Program. It is a global initiative that helps participants learn about their inner resources. Linda and I helped bring this program to the Lyman Correctional Facility at Colorado State Prison. One of the participants, after the first class, came up to Linda, all excited, and said, "I want more." And Linda said, "Yes, there's more, and we will see you next week." Since then, he has become an excellent facilitator who the younger incarcerated individuals really, really respect. After Linda became too weak and vulnerable to go in person to the prison, he became concerned about her absence. Every time I went, he asked, how was she doing, and said that he prayed for her regularly. The last time I was in class, he gave me a personal card for both of us and mainly for her. She was able to enjoy this card before she passed. I want to take a moment to thank not only him, but all our angels in the form of family, friends, neighbors, and aides for their love and support. Being together for 52 years she was indeed a part of me. This is not to say we always agreed on everything. Linda always maintained her independence and integrity. We knew that we were unique, yet shared that universal essence that all of us share. I'm going to conclude with a book that Prem Rawat wrote. It's called Hear Yourself. And this little chapter, part of this chapter, the whole chapter is actually called Unburdened for Rough Times. And it's been a panacea for me and for anyone who would look it over. But it's called Look Up to the Moon. Many scientists believe the moon came from Earth. The theory, sometimes called the giant impact hypothesis, is that a gigantic body smashed into our young planet and a fabulous new satellite was formed from the debris. When the moon left us, it only went so far. Now it orbits its old home. As it moves, influences us down here, perhaps we could think of our past loved one becoming our moon. They are always part of us. I'm going to finish this thing. They are always part of us. They circle our life. They illuminate our nights. They pull on our tides of our emotions, moving us. Look up and see the reflection of light from the sun on their face. We can honor the person who passed and accept them in the new way they are with us. There's no need to hold on to what was. We can float on the tide of life, letting the water support us as we gaze up into the night sky and feel the connection with the moon. We can sense our pain while also knowing there is a lifelong feeling of togetherness with them in our heart. We can treasure what was by celebrating what is, carrying our loved ones through life in our love.
Now I invite Emily up to speak.
When I think about my mom, I think of what my Buddhist teacher Nichiren Daishonin said. It is the heart that is most important. Her goodness, her purity in a world of evil and chaos, so rare in this day and age. One time, my cousin, RJ Phillips, was visiting us in Massapequa, and he reported to me that he was sitting in my brother's room eating string cheese when my mom came in, stood at the doorway and said, "Are you eating cheese?" Followed by her signature giggle. RJ was confused by this interaction and was looking at me for guidance. To me, it was simply just my mom. Although my mom and I shared a communication style once described by Scott Maddock as the delightful delivery of the obvious, we were also very different in our personalities, which sometimes made it hard for me to relate to my mom. But as I got older, I came to appreciate more and more who she was. And I would like to share about that with all of you. First, my mom was open-minded. As you've heard, my mom was a Girl Scout. It was a very important part of her life. And she shared with me recently that one of her best memories from her childhood was getting together with her troop, having a huge garage sale, and raising enough money to go on a river rafting trip. So, of course, when I was in kindergarten, she asked me, "Do you want to be in Daisies?" And I saw people in uniforms, and I said, "No, Mom, they are conformists." Now, I did not know at the time that the Girl Scouts was a radical feminist organization, which would have made me join immediately. But you know what? Even though my mom had this long history with the Girl Scouts, she didn't force me to join. She never forced me to do anything, which was perhaps her greatest and her worst quality as a mother. It gifted my brother Eric and me with our unique personalities, but also made us barely aware of social conventions. Apologies in advance to anyone who attends the Shiva today. She was so open-minded, she converted to Judaism when I was a teenager, and it was a deep and profound spiritual experience for her to bathe in the mikvah. There was a joke in our family that the shock of her conversion after so many years actually killed Bobby. But I would like to think that it killed her, not only from surprise, but also from happiness. My mom was a shower-upper. This is another rare quality nowadays. My mom always showed up. After Uncle Hal died, she made a point to show up at any milestone of my cousins, Adam and Julie, and I really admired that about her. She would pick me up and drop me off dutifully at college in Providence, even when it meant taking the ferry or the train or the bus or even the boat one time. She visited me in every country I ever lived in and every state, including Poland, which, let's face it, no one wants to visit Poland. When she did visit Poland, I created a rich cultural itinerary for her, filled with museums and urban explorations. But when I asked her, what was your favorite part of your trip, Mom? Hoping she'd pick something from my list, she said, it was going to the mountains with Tomek, my ex-father-in-law. I was insulted, of course, but I also understood because, lastly, my mom was a mountain girl. She was a fourth-generation Coloradan. Did I get that right, Aunt Karen? Yes, a fourth-generation Coloradan. Our family has been here since the 19th century. She was a lifelong supporter of environmental causes before it was trendy. And she also ate tofu. And one time, looking at pictures with Samantha Napolitano of our trip up Pikes Peak when we came to visit, like we did every summer when we lived on Long Island, Sam remarked how happy she looked here, that she was glowing. And it was so beautiful that she could begin and end her life here, close to her sister Karen, her brother-in-law Dan, her nephew Matthew, her niece Christine, and other family members from the Quist and Pudalov clans, especially Heidi, Steve, and Colleen, our very close cousins. Sometimes I used to think that maybe my mom didn't fulfill her potential because she was primarily a wife and a mother, rather than a person working in a profession. That's my judgmental side, which thankfully also makes me funny. But standing here today, I want to say that my mom was a rare person who touched many lives with her exceptional purity. And when I was open to receiving it, that includes and especially my own life. Even though from an early age, my mom raised me to love flying on airplanes as she loved to travel. A few years ago, I developed a debilitating fear of flying. I missed several flights, and then I stopped flying altogether for a few years. Before a recent flight from Denver to LA, knowing how I was suffering, she texted me. She said, I read one time that our fears are only trying to keep us safe. Tell your fear, thank you. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I'm okay, I'm safe. And you may know my mom loved Oprah. She said, Oprah says, when we know better, we do better. I am very grateful that I got to spend this past year with my mom. I got to have the kind of relationship with her that I always wanted, which was filled with love and nurturance. So, Mom, Mom, if you can hear me, I want to tell you thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this life. You are good. You are good. You are exceptionally good. And now you're free, and I'm okay. Thank you so much.
Now I'd like to invite Eric up.
Oh, that's okay. Hi, everyone. I wrote this poem called The Phoenix and the Dove.
about mom, and it's kind of about death and rebirth and all that, so. In the present moment, the dove rises beyond the firmament, wings beating with a percussive sound. Eternal messenger, bringer of peace, however fleeting it may seem, she enfolds the sky face with feathered hands. In synchronous movements, the phoenix revives, fiery wings emerging from the sun. An ocean of flame bursts from its body, reminding one of the ceaselessness of life and the cyclical nature of all things. The phoenix and the dove meet at the rising of the moonshade. So as the body sleeps, sound and vibration handle a light unceasing, as wisps of life light streak across an evening, craving hope. It is there in the lunar dew, waiting to be found again, and we may find it wherever we may look. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Rhea.
Good morning. Doing a sound check here. Good morning. Better. And how honored I am to share this microphone with Cantor Adler, who spoke such beautiful words, and with Emily, Eric, and Mitch, the family whose thoughts and memories of Linda have touched us all. I'm now going to speak as Linda's friend. I may not know Linda as well as you have known Linda, but I have known her longer. Mitch requested me to contribute to this event because I've known Linda since our days in junior high school, about a mile from here at Dove on Colorado Boulevard. And then for 3 more years, about a half a mile from here at East High School. It would seem that in some ways, the two of us just didn't go very far in this world. Secondly, I have a current perspective. Since when Linda and Mitch moved back to Parker, she and I rekindled our friendship, and that connection soon extended to Mitch. And last, there was Cantor Adler's input. When we recently met with her, I mentioned an Old Testament passage that seemed pertinent, and she asked me to share that story with you, too. So I'm wearing a few hats this morning. My name is Ray Gottesfeld. I'm a Denver native who headed east to college when Linda went west. Eventually, we both found our way back here. I am delighted to share my memories, thoughts, feelings, and stories about Linda. Return with me now to the very first day of 7th grade. And we are sitting in homeroom with others we know from elementary school and some others who went to different elementary schools. What's first? Attendance taking. And attendance taking at the beginning of that class now reminds me of when Ben Stein took attendance in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. In his monotone, Ben runs through the last names, beginning with the A names and then a few B names, until he reaches Bueller. He calls Bueller, Bueller, Bueller. It was a classic scene from a classic movie, since Ferris was busy ditching school with his friends, something Linda would never have done. That scene was a showstopper, and so was ours. Because on our first day of class, the teacher got as far as the H's, and then he called out, Hooker, Linda Hooker. And drowning out Linda's response was a cacophony of teenage boy goofiness and insensitivity, which more or less followed her for months. Hardly a propitious way to start a junior high school career. Now, there are many ways a 13-year-old girl could have handled this. And we know them all. Anger, withdrawal, sarcasm, acting out, no internet to go to, depression, but school avoidance, meanness. And no, we did not experience any of those from Linda, not one. She just soldiered on, seemingly impervious to the taunts, abiding through it all. She was a tall and lithe blonde with sometime bangs and a permanent smile on her face. No, not one of those self-conscious fixed smiles that seem plastered on, but a real smile. Mostly she seemed serious, to the point where sometimes we wondered, does she even get what's going on? But she did. And behind that smile, which until the end showed every one of her front teeth, was a patient, calm, older than stated age type of maturity. And then, when she was with friends, and I point you to this picture here, she had a staccato laugh that sounded as musical as an arpeggio, sometimes extending her head up through that hood, up and down, which gave her her nickname, Turtle. During those teenage years together, I never once noticed her lose her temper, raise her voice, or act in any way unladylike. And that was odd to me, because during the late 60s, ladylike was not an adjective anyone aspired to be. This was not the silent 50s. These were the 60s, replete with rock and roll and possibly some sex and drugs. Ladylike did not describe our popular heroines, Janis Joplin, Linda Ronstadt, Cher. But it did, and always did, describe Linda. She was present. She was kind and she was caring, but not in a gushy or treacly way. No, not that. In an understated way. She was loving, giving, and supportive. We've heard all that. You don't need to hear that again from me. But behind that, she was truthful, with an iron will. I've been searching for a metaphor to describe Linda's impact on us. And bear with me, what comes to mind is something like Ted Lasso. If you can imagine him as a teenage girl cheering at an American football game. If you've seen the show, you know that this American, so out of place coaching British soccer or football, a team that finds its way to connect with even the harshest critics. And why is that? Because it turns out Ted is a true gentleman. He projects a decidedly masculine version of what might, in a woman, be called ladylike. He displays unshakable good humor and goodwill, universal acceptance, and oh, so patient non-judgmentalism. As Ted pulls his life together and his team together, people calm down, they speak the truth, they work through anger and disagreements, and they become better people. So when we say goodbye to these characters after 3 years, we realize that each, in his or own way, has become a little more like Ted. They are focused, they have become responsible adults, they have purpose. What we have heard today from the family, all of the members of the family, is how much Linda has been a Ted Lasso to them. And from my experience, to many others of her friends. From kindergarten through each stage, college, New York, back to Denver, she's been there. Now, earlier, I used a word about her abiding, not one we use very often. Abiding implies persistence, strength, and endurance. And for people, someone who abides is someone you can count on. Someone with inner strength who doesn't whine or complain, who accepts help when she needs it and offers help when someone else needs it. Where did this trait come from? Who would have known that this unusually shy and quiet teenager would have developed into such a strong woman? About a week ago, looking through the family photo albums with with Linda's sister Karen, I had an aha moment about this. Staring back at me from this large photograph was one of the most powerful images I've ever seen. Allow me to describe it for you. It was a frontier-looking Colorado woman standing upright, tall and straight, by a beautiful horse. She wore a long skirt, leather boots, hat and gauntlets, and a fringed leather vest. My God, she was right out of central casting. As I looked closer, gazing back at me was Linda's face. Or at least a face that looked virtually identical to one that I'd known for 60 years. Indeed, Linda was the spitting image of this woman, her grandmother, Lucille Artemisia Rudd Quist. How is that for a strong name? Oh, and something else. I neglected to describe a detail of that picture. Let me do that now. On the left side of her belt was a 6-shooter. And it was positioned on the left side of her belt for an efficient crossbody draw quickly, using only her right hand while guiding her horse with the left hand. You can do that in Western saddle, but English saddle, you can't do that. You see, this woman was a college-educated teacher at a time when most women didn't go to college. She taught in a rough and tumble school up in South Park, where she had to carry a gun to ride through sometimes dangerous mining camps on her way to and from teaching school. Where did Linda come from? Perhaps from the undaunted Grandma Quist. Now I'd like to transition to say a few words about Linda's commitment, fidelity, and how she walked her talk. You've heard about Mitch's mother in some interesting terms. Linda and Mitch were together for several years before Linda traveled to Long Island to finally meet her. And although I never personally met Mitch's parents, they sound like many Jewish families of that era. They didn't necessarily believe in integrating with the world around them. They were not immigrants, but had lived through the horrors of World War II. They were particularly concerned about intermarriage. Both Linda and Mitch were aware that the inquest by his mother would be no picnic, and it wasn't. What came next was as uncomfortable as a Larry David scene from Curb Your Enthusiasm. As the group was sitting in the living room, the mother-in-law turned to Linda and said, so you want to marry my son? Yes, said Linda, I do. So, went on the mother-in-law, tell me something. If times should ever get bad again, and they started to round up Jewish people in America, and they came to take Mitchell, what would you do? How would you answer that question about your fiance? Find an excuse? Focus on your safety? Remember, there were no children then. But no, not Linda. That is not what she did. Without stopping to take even a breath, Linda replied, "You will be my husband. If they came to take him away, I would go with him." And this was 10 years before Linda chose to accept the Jewish faith for herself. This woman so very much understood the meanings of commitment and family. Such a tale of fidelity, commitment, purpose, and unshakable faith is a powerful one, yet it is not without precedent in our Jewish tradition. That precedent is a story of the Jewish Bible, the Old Testament. It's not generally recognized as one of the biggies. It comes near the end of the Bible in the book of Ruth and is the story of Ruth and Naomi. Here's a short version. As in the Joseph story in Egypt, it begins with a famine, this one in Judea, where Naomi's family lived. To escape the famine, she and her husband traveled from near the Dead Sea to an area called Moab, located in modern-day Jordan. And they traveled there with their 2 sons. They settled there, and after a few years, the sons took local Moabite wives. But eventually, the husband and the sons died before grandchildren were born, leaving the wife alone with her 2 daughters-in-law. The wife, Naomi, having no other kin in Moab, decided to return home to her family in Judea. Although she and one of the younger daughters-in-law had become good friends, she tells them both to return to their Moabite families. And this is where the story gets interesting. One of them says her goodbyes and is relieved to head back to her people. The other one, Ruth, and remember this is the book of Ruth, says she won't do that. She is staying. She married into the family, and even though her husband has died, she has made a choice. She's going to abide by that choice. She stays to help and care for Naomi, and she declares to Naomi, Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. And that is precisely what Linda was telling Mitch's mother. She had made a decision and given her word, and her word was her bond. And after that, Linda found a way, in typical Linda fashion, to remain tightly on good terms with Mitch's relatives, as well as her own. A will of iron, smoothed by kindness and emotional generosity. Thank you, Pudalov family, for giving me this opportunity to say words about my longtime friend, Linda. We will all miss her.
We will now have a wordless musical prayer time and make space for each of you to cherish your memories of Linda and silently pray any words that may be waiting to be expressed in your hearts. Feel free to close your eyes, place your hands over your hearts, or even to stand up, as is done in the traditional Amidah, the standing, silent prayer, and then sit down when you feel that your prayer is complete. I invite you all in mind, body, or spirit to rise for the recitation of El Male Rachamim. And I invite Linda's cousin Steve to come up and read the English translation of El Male Rachamim.
God, full of mercy, who dwells in high places, grant full repose under Shekinah's wings in the heights of the holy and pure, like a light glowing in the firmament, to the soul of Linda, daughter of Francis and Scott. Merciful one, conceal her under your wings forever and bind her soul to life. The compassionate one is her portion. May she rest in peace in her place. And let us pray. Amen.
El Male Rachamim, Shochan Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah. Be'malot kedoshim u'torim kezohar hara hirim et nishmat Leah bat Francis Viscott Ana ba'al harachamim Yastireha beseter kenafav leolamim Bitzror hachayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalato Lianuach Amishkeva beshalom. Venomar Amen. You may be seated. Linda loved the Tree of Life song, a joyful melody that is not usually done at funerals. In celebration of Linda's beautiful soul, this melody embodies the shalom, peace, harmony that Linda brought to so many. And it even reflects her love of the environment and the Jewish respect for trees. It compares the Torah, our sacred text, to a tree of life. And if you have your program, I believe it's on there. Tree of Life, Eitz Chaim Hi. We'll sing it in English and Hebrew. She is a tree of life to those who hold fast to her, and all of her supporters are happy. She is a tree of life to those who hold fast to her, and all of her supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom. Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba betomchecha. מאושר עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה בתומכך מאושר. שלום, 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 שלום. Shalom.
Hi, folks. Thank you for coming. This nearly concludes our service today. Before we conclude, we're going to watch the slideshow with some music all the way through, and I would like to make an announcement before we do that. There will not be an escorted procession to the cemetery. However, everyone is invited to participate in the interment at Emmanuel within Fairmount Cemetery. The directions to the cemetery were in your handout. There's been a slight change to those, so we've placed new copies in the foyer when you exit. Also for family, there's new copies in the family room for when you exit. Just a couple things to remember when we're driving. Please obey all traffic laws since we're not in an escorted procession. We do have to follow stoplights, stop signs, and if you do get separated, just please try to catch up to the cars. Or if you find a safe place, give the office a call and we'll help you. Also, something to remember, for GPS, the address is 430 South Quebec Street. This is on the handout as well. This will take you to the main entrance of Fairmount. We will be using the Emmanuel Cemetery entrance. It has a gate just south of the main entrance. Just a few more things. Like I said, please obey all traffic laws. That's very important. And then lastly, once we conclude the slideshow, we will dismiss the family if you could stay seated, and then we'll dismiss guests afterwards. Thank you again.
Thank you all for joining for this part of our service. This does conclude this aspect. If you would please quickly, if you're going to follow to the cemetery, get to your vehicles safely. The family will be on their way as well. So if you guys have any questions, myself and my team can help. Thank you for coming.